Hi, and welcome back to another writing vlog in which I finally write this outline. As you know from my last video, since coming to Canada, I have decided to work on this new work in progress, which I'm still kind of trying to figure out what I want to call it on this channel before it has a title. I don't even have a working title for myself. I have been for the past, off and on several months, working on brainstorming, working on figuring out my characters, but the plot is the one thing that has been just chugging along the slowest. It's been giving me the absolute most trouble. Perfectionism and my inability to land on something and just go with it and trust myself, trust my gut that that's the right direction. I just keep flip-flopping and thinking that's a terrible idea. I'm gonna run into all these issues. Definitely go check out my last video if you want to hear me talk a little bit more about that. But what I've been working on for the past several writing sessions has been making decisions, nailing some stuff down, and just going with it and trying to get into this draft, because at this point it's becoming procrastination. It's becoming a huge crutch that I'm leaning on in my writing, and it's stopping me from moving forward. So I'm just gonna have to go with it and see what happens, and if I'm drafting and I realize something needs to be fixed, I'll fix it, when the time comes. But at this point, I need to trust my gut and just make some decisions about the plot. So in this writing vlog, I don't know how long it's gonna take me, but you are going to see me struggle through the actual plotting of this book. I'm going to put some concrete things down, and after this point, I will be able to finally start drafting and see if I've made a mess. Right now, I have 6 or 6.5-ish chapters planned out, but that's where I was really getting stuck. I kind of had the start, the event that sets my characters off in their disparate directions. What I'd really like these two POV characters to do is stand out from each other. And more than just the characters are different and the voice is different, but I actually kind of want the tone of their chapters to be a little bit different. I have one character who's very headstrong, who needs to be maybe have the edge taken off a little bit, and I have another character who is very passive, who needs to become more active. The one that is more headstrong and sharp-edged and, has a little bit of learning to do but doesn't realize how much she has to do. I'd like her kind of first half of her journey to be very active, making lots of decisions, having tons of agency. Hi, Hamlet. It's not time for dinner. But yeah, I would like her to take more initiative, and then her second half, I'd like to be a little bit more consequences of some of the mistakes that she's made or choices that she's made, whether or not they're a mistake. So then it'll feel a little bit more like the plot is happening to her. And I'd like the other POV to kind of do the opposite, because that character is much more passive and doesn't realize her worth, basically. And I kind of she does make a decision at the beginning, because I do feel it's important for her to still have agency. But I'd like more things in the first half to be kind of happening to her, and her not necessarily choosing it and not wanting to do what the plot needs her to do. Basically, the plot guides her, the plot forces her to do things, and then more so in her second half to have more agency from her, and then of course she controls more of what's happening in the plot, if that makes sense. Because I don't have the actual scenes in my head just yet, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to play out well. I don't know if it's going to be interesting to read. Maybe it'll be, maybe it'll make one POV really interesting and one not interesting at all, or one character really likable and one not likable at all. I really would like people to at least have a reason to be invested in both, and maybe it's not going to work. And also it might be something that I can make a little bit more clear in revisions. With all of that said, it is getting late, as my cat has told me many times, so I'm going to stop vlogging now. I'm going to get to working, start working on more of this outline. Like I said, I have 6.5 chapters already outlined, so I'm going to go from there. And throughout this vlog, I hope this shit comes together. Wish me luck, and I will talk to you soon. Hello, and welcome back to my writing vlog. We are fully in crunch mode right now. This has been a very, very stressful time. I feel like the past week or so, I have had some of the highest highs with this project and some of the lowest lows with this project. Every day I wake up and I feel differently about my book. Either it's the coolest book I've ever written and it's gonna be amazing and I can't wait to sit down and actually draft, or I feel like it's falling to pieces, it doesn't make sense, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I've been writing for a very long time, but I would still consider myself learning when it comes to my process, because I haven't written that many books. I've written for a very long time, but I tend to stick with a project for a while when it comes to my novels, at least, and really, put a lot of time into it. So I haven't actually started a story from scratch and gotten it all the way through a draft that many times in the grand scheme of things. So I would still consider myself learning what works for me. So I'm trying to be patient with myself, and I'm trying to just kind of explore what is working, what is not. One of the things that I'm trying, not for the first time, but for the first time that I hope will result in a project that I actually get through a draft, I'm using the Save the Cat template, basically. I think Save the Cat is a really interesting way of looking at stories, and I don't think it's the end all be all. I don't think it is the right way for every writer to approach a story. I do think that most stories in one way or another can kind of fit into this. And I'm not sure how much importance I'm going to put on the Save the Cat beats, but I do think it's very useful. And I think it's helped me a lot in trying to craft this plot that is just being so unwieldy and not cooperating with me, and trying to figure out where all these random ideas I have in my head of where the story needs to go and how it's going to get there and what my characters could encounter along the way, trying to give that more structure. And I think that's the entire point of Save the Cat. It's not to be an exact formula. It's not so that you can actually measure things out by percentages, unless you really want to, but I'm not that analytical. It's just there to help kind of guide these ideas into a structure that ideally will help readers respond well to your book and help follow along with the story and come along on this story with your characters in a way that feels satisfying. It'll keep them turning the page, basically. All of that to basically say, I'm working alongside the beat sheet for Save the Cat. I am outlining in Scrivener, which I found very useful so far. Most of one POV is done, and I'm about to launch back into the really significant part of the second POV. And then we'll go from there. When I tell you that this story has challenged me in every way I've ever thought possible, it is not an exaggeration. The past few days have been a roller coaster. I have felt all of the emotions. Something was just not quite working, and it led up to basically yesterday I decided I needed to rewrite the backstory that kind of fuels what is happening in my main plot. What's actually happening in the timeline of my book is somewhat a result of something that happened before, and I decided that I needed to change those events and potentially also completely change the basically inciting incident that starts my story, which is based on that. And I worked on it for several hours yesterday, made a lot of progress, what I thought was progress, and I changed so much to the point where I had saved some of my notes as original versions before edits, and then was working in a new version. And I changed so much, and as I kept changing and reworking, I started realizing that for everything I fixed that I thought was a problem with what I had before, I was ripping open a new hole somewhere else that was gonna be impossible to patch up, or it didn't work with this other thing that I wanted to incorporate in the story. And for everything I fixed, I broke something else. It got so bad yesterday that I was completely certain in the moment that the story was just broken and irreparable, and it was a waste of time, and everything that I've been doing with the story was a big waste of time. One of those everything is falling apart sort of moments where realism just doesn't even enter your mind. You're just upset about everything. Today, I woke up and my mission to myself was to get myself back on track and to figure out what went wrong, how to fix it, how to move forward, because, we can have these low points as creative people. Sometimes it feels like everything's falling apart, but, I can't let myself just wallow in that. I know that there is good in this story, and I just had to have a better perspective. So yesterday, I closed the chapter, I let myself have that day, and today I started it as a new day. Going back over what I was working on yesterday, I realized that I went a little too far astray, and that actually my original version had some more things that were salvageable than I was giving myself credit for. I considered going back to my original draft of those notes that I told you I had saved different versions of, and working from my old versions instead of the new ones, but actually I decided it would be more helpful because I had made some really useful and valuable changes yesterday. It wasn't a complete waste of a day. So I decided to use that old version of some of those notes to reapply some of the things and change the chain of events to better match what I had before in some ways, but working from that new draft. Because again, I think I actually did a lot of good work yesterday. I didn't give myself enough credit. And the result, I'm actually really happy with. This afternoon, I decided to go to a cafe to do a little bit more work and to basically start reanalyzing what I'd written so far in my plot, because that is going to need to change. A lot of it I will use, a lot of the scenes that I drafted or the things that I wanted characters to have an interaction about, or basically some of the characterization that I was working on through those scenes. I will definitely be able to use a lot of those granular details as I'm reworking the outline, but I am going to have to change a lot of the events, I think. I'm not sure yet how much. This afternoon, my goal was to start on that process, so I've gone back to my opening chapters, and it's been a while since I even wrote those, I feel like. I mean, it's not been that long, but it does feel like an eternity. So I'm reacquainting myself with those scenes at the same time as reworking them. And so far I haven't made a ton of changes, but the changes are upcoming because the inciting incident is about to happen, and that's going to be a little bit different from how I originally had it. And then I'm definitely going to change a lot of stuff as my two POVs split off after that inciting incident. Hi, Bingley. If you see a cat ear. He's just coming to check out my setup. I'm using a cardboard box to prop my camera up here, so I think he might have just shifted it a little bit. Hi, Bingley. All good? The next several sessions are going to be dedicated to reworking my outline and hopefully making a lot of progress forward. I'm feeling really good about my story. I am back at it. I have my playlist going. I'm excited to do something that I haven't done before that's challenging me in so many ways. I hope it'll be worth it, but that's how you grow. So I am here for the challenge and the adventure. Thank you, Bingley. That's all for now. I will talk to you again very soon. I finally finished the outline. Yes! I am so happy. This is the first time that I have successfully taken an idea from its baby stages to an actual story plot. I know I don't have a draft yet, but this is the first time that I've been able to actually make an idea work in a way that I feel like tells a story for years, actually. The last book that I wrote, I do really love, by the way, but I started it I think I got the idea either in late 2018 or early 2019, and I was able to write the whole plot and write the story, and I revised multiple times, and I'm still gonna go back and probably revise it some more. I was even thinking about that just before this video, but that's gonna be a different day. I'm gonna enjoy the success that I'm having today first. So what exactly happened between this vlog clip and the last clip that you watched where I was ripping it apart? I've talked about I was doing Scrivener and scene by scene outlining, and that's typically how I will write my outlines. At least I have up until now. I like to experience the story as if I'm writing a Discovery first draft, except I don't actually write the scenes. I just write what needs to happen in the scenes, but I go usually at a very granular detail. Usually for me, bullet points that contain multiple scenes are less helpful. I really want to envision how it's going to unfold scene by scene, which means that it takes a lot longer than a general bullet point outline would. But I was in the thick of it. I was just really stuck trying to figure out kind of the second half of the book. Basically, it was messy from the midpoint onwards. I was really lost in the thick of it, and I just didn't understand where the second and third acts needed to go. So I took a chance and I went away from Scrivener and I just opened up the Save the Cat beat sheet template in Microsoft Word, and I had been working in this kind of side by side with Scrivener. So I decided to just focus on those beats. Let's see if I can actually just figure out where the story's going without envisioning scene by scene, just looking at what needs to happen in the most basic way possible. I did still do some scene by scene planning because that's just how my brain works. But working from the Save the Cat beat sheet meant that in the moments when I didn't necessarily have the scene by scene envisioned, or when I knew really basically what needed to happen, or had an idea for what could happen and I didn't know how it was going to play out in scene by scene, I could just write it within the beat. The big exception to this is the finale beat. This one I spent a lot more time on. I got very granular. I got within each scene the beats exactly as they happen in the scenes, the motions, the dialogue sometimes. Like I got very, very, very detailed there, but I allowed myself to do that and it actually was flowing. So like I said, if I had it flowing, if I had the ideas, I'm not just gonna ignore them and hope they come back to me when I'm writing that scene. Like I wrote it down, but I really did search for that sort of detail as I was planning out the finale, because finales, the climaxes of books have always been the toughest thing for me. Midpoints are hard, opening's hard, closing's hard, all of that's hard, but the finale is usually the place that if I decide something is wrong with this book, mine or a book that I'm reading actually as well, I'm so rarely satisfied with finales. And when it comes to my own writing, it's even worse because I actually have the power to fix it, except sometimes I don't even know if what I'm searching for is like achievable. I am very picky and very hard on myself if I feel like there's something missing. So I really wanted to make sure that I knew where I was going in this finale, that I knew what kind of resolutions to my characters' arcs I was seeking out and how to accomplish those. Ultimately, I feel very confident with what I've done. I feel like I got my characters where I needed them to go. I know how to have those impactful moments. When it comes to things that I still need to figure out, there are some details, some things as simple as a character name or just a little bit of backstory about what kind of character personalities that I can bring into play with my story. And there is like one example in particular where I need to figure out, let's say, a side mission, a little bit of revenge that needs to happen for a side plot that is very much important, but the actual thing that happens isn't something that everything else is writing on. So my story still works without knowing what that thing is, but it needs to be a satisfying thing that I have to write in there. And right now it's just all caps, really cool thing to happen. Basically, there are some important things that I still need to figure out that are still a little bit vague in my mind, but none of them are things that the main elements of my story are reliant upon. They're things that add depth to the setting, to my characters. They do affect the main storyline. They're very much a part of the story, but they're not things that I need to know in order to know, can my plot go from this very key beat to this very key beat? The key beats are all set. I'm gonna give myself probably the next few days to not commit to focused work, but just kind of mull over what I've been doing, noodle on some little things that I still need to figure out, and maybe I'll have some good ideas, maybe I'll have some realizations and be able to fill in some of those gaps before I start drafting. And otherwise, if I'm still feeling pretty good about it after a few days, I will start trying to figure out and define some of those things that I do think need to be defined before I jump into drafting. And then I'm just gonna let myself go and dive into this first draft and see where it takes me. I am so happy that I'm finally sitting down and sharing this with you guys. This is something I've wanted to be able to do for a long time, and I kind of had forgotten what it felt like to feel this victorious in a writing goal, in achieving something related to my writing. And I still have the entire draft to write, but somehow I just feel good about my story. Thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments below if this motivated you, if you're also going through a difficult time or a great time. If you are drafting or revising, give me a little bit of motivation for what's coming next for me. If you want to come along the journey with me, be sure you're subscribed to my channel, and you can also turn on notifications if you want to get a notification as soon as I upload a new video, which will be either a writing vlog or something about the things that I'm writing or reading or things that are inspiring me. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon in another writing video.